Well, going back to faith and purpose and all of that, I mean, it's very obvious that you have been obedient to what the Lord has put on your heart every step of the way. I don't know, I guess just talk a little bit about the importance of being surrendered and taking those steps of faith and being obedient to the Lord. And also purpose as well. Like, did you always feel like this was your purpose, or was it just something you discovered along the way as you take those steps of faith?
Well, I think purpose comes with time,
Mm,
and there's more than one purpose in
mm-hmm,
your life. I never expected to be at CBN. That was
mm-hmm,
not anything that was on my radar. I was very happy at home raising my 4 children and had left my work in broadcast
mm-hmm.
to be home with them. I wanted to do that until they were all in school.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so for 6 years, I left and
Mm-hmm.
never looked back. I mean, I never regretted
Wow.
leaving. It
Yeah.
was wonderful being home with them. I mean, we had so much fun just doing things that I couldn't have done if I hadn't been home with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, when the opportunity to come to CBN came, again, I felt the Lord telling us to go, and I was actually kind of not
Mm-hmm.
happy about it
Mm-hmm.
because Tyler was only 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why would you ask me to go back to work when Tyler's only 4?
Mm.
But we came and, um, we left behind grandparents and friends and a church, and that was our comfortable
Yeah.
place. One of the things I've learned is don't put your roots down too deeply because it's so hard to yank those things up out of the ground.
Mm.
And so, when I came knowing that God was going to do something different. My kids have been in fabulous Christian schools.
Mm.
We have had evangelists and preachers in our home and people that they've met like that they never would have known if I'd stayed comfortable.
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know?
Wow. Yeah.
So now I've learned when you're comfortable, you better start looking over your shoulder and hitting your knees on the ground and praying because
Yeah.
God's always up to something. But I think that out of all of that bit by bit purpose
Yeah.
came. And, my purpose was to be a mom and I was growing in that.
Yeah.
But God wanted to do something bigger than that honestly wasn't even on the horizon for years after we came.
Mm-hmm.
But he's way out in front of us, way out in
Yes.
front. And I
Yeah.
love that about him because I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
it. That's
Mhm.
tomorrow and I'm just doing today.
Mm-hmm.
I love that saying, be in the present. That's why they call it the present, because today is a gift.
Yes.
I don't have tomorrow, I
Yeah.
have now.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to live like that.
Mm.
Obedience, wow. I mean, you can't put a price tag on it.
Mm.
Really, it's the secret sauce to everything. And it shouldn't be surprising to us because it's all over the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, all over the Bible. There's not a story you can read that isn't either showing you the benefit of obedience or the repercussions of not
Yep.
being obedient. So, from the time I came to Christ, my life was radically changed. And obedience was just part of the journey,
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
this is not to say that I've never struggled with it.
Yeah. Not to say that
Because-
obedience is
Yeah,
easy.
no,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's not easy. But I was reading in Ezekiel 47 this morning, a scripture again, where it talks about a river that flows underneath the temple, and the reader is taking you through the ankle deep water, and then the knee deep, and then the hip deep, and then I heard a man preaching on this one night, and he called people to come into different levels, and then he got to the last one, and he said, "Those of you who are willing to go in over your head, stand up." And I mean, I did not do it frivolously. I stood up with tears running down my face, but at the same time, with a deep, deep conviction in me that really it was the only game in town that mattered.
Wow.
Everything else
Yes.
was like, what am I going to do that's my own?
Yeah.
And God, I really believe there was a turning point at that that evening, hearing that message and standing
Wow.
up that night
Yeah.
was like a covenant that I made with God that said, wherever you're going, I'm going. Whatever you're calling me to, I'm doing. And it doesn't matter how deep the water is. I'm with you.
Wow. That is beautiful. I guess talk to me a little bit more about that night where you stood up.
Well, it was a very intense evening. It was an auditorium with a man named Art Katz speaking. And he was a very intense speaker. You know, I don't know if you've ever been in a room like that where
Yeah.
the Spirit of the Lord is just heavy in the room. And he wasn't messing around with people. It was a very serious message about how willing are you to follow God, to be obedient to the things we're talking about, you know, to come out with him to what he's calling
Yeah.
you to. And so he used that scripture from Ezekiel 47 of, you know, leading you into the water's ankle deep there.
Yeah.
And then you go in, and so he said, if you're willing to go in the water ankle deep, stand up. So a lot of people stood up.
Yeah.
And then he said, now if you're willing to go in up to your knees, stand up.
Oof.
And, you know, some people sat down, some more people stood up. And then your hips. And then he said, I am not messing with anybody here tonight. Do not stand up because you want to look spiritual or because you want to be seen.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're willing to go in over your head, this is a commitment between you and God. Stand up tonight, but thoughtfully stand up, weighing what you're saying. And, you know, I just knew.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just know. And my life was, I was in the middle of a very unwanted divorce at the time. I was in a very painful place. But I knew that that over my head was where I needed to be with Jesus. And so I just stood up weeping and knowing that I wasn't the only one who stood up. There were others who stood up as well. But, you know, it's a scary place to say yes to God when you don't know your future. You don't have any answers. I mean, there was a point in my life where I never thought I'd have kids. Imagine that. And
Look at God.
Yeah, really, look
Yeah.
at God. But, you know, sometimes God asks us to stand up when we don't have any answers, when we don't know where we're going, and when we don't know what tomorrow holds. But when we do it, when we say, I'm with you, God, I'm, you know, in my mind, I just climb right up in his lap and I just lay down there.
Yeah.
You know, and I just say, God, you know, you carry me. I can't walk anymore. I can't do this by myself. And so I feel like that night, at that moment, something happened in my spirit with the Lord that I was making a covenant agreement with him that my life was not mine, it was his, and that I would live it in him and for him. And I would trust him with the big stuff and the little stuff and everything in between. And I have to say, it's been a journey that has been beyond anything I could have imagined. And not just because of Orphan's Promise or because of the wonderful family that he's given me. It's because of who he is and just the understanding that he lives in. I mean, I just find that astonishing. Like the God of the universe, the creator of all that is alive in me. And I get to go to bed with that every night and wake up with it every morning and walk in it every day. And I mean, nothing else compares. Nothing else compares. And here's the deal. Everybody's invited to the party.
Exactly.
You know, it's whosoever will may come. Come if you're afraid. Come if you're lonely. Come if you're depressed. Come if you feel like you haven't got 2 cents worth of anything to give to him, because he's going to fill you. And it's going to be more than you could have asked for or imagined.
Gosh, that's inspiring. I needed to hear that, because I think it's so beautiful that was before. I mean, that was before you met Andy. That was before.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was before any of this, you know?
In fact, it was a time of very very deep challenge in my life because I was going through a divorce that was, I was working in television, so it was very public.
Oh gosh.
But I had biblical grounds, but I couldn't say, I didn't feel like I could say why, because my husband was an only child and his parents would have been devastated. And so I just cried out to the Lord one day in my pain, and I said, God, I don't understand, like what possible glory could come to you in this? What possible goodness? And clear, Isabel, you know, when God drops something, it's like the voice isn't audible, but it might as well be. He said, leave your reputation with me.
Oof.
And it was so clear and so direct and so concise.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay. And, you know, people will always think what they want to think about you. I mean, you know, I had been a former Miss America. I was working in television. I'm sure people thought I had some great ego that, you know, I was terrible to live with and whatever. And you know what? God was just saying, I've got you. He's really got us. You know, he really carries us. Most of the time we think we're walking. We're not. He's carrying us.
Yeah, he's a good dad.
Yeah. And so, you know, life has been like that, and in a very good way. And over time, you learn. It's just like going to school. You know, in first grade, I only knew this much, but in second grade, I got this much. You know, if you just take every day, every week, every month, every year, one day at a time, you learn along the way, and then suddenly you're just living with you.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place to be.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.